Following the post office scandal, which I've covered in 5 minutes in a separate video, the question of how to deal with the wrongful convictions has arisen. Now, one of the suggestions is that the government could issue blanket pardons or pass an Act of Parliament to exonerate all of the Sub-Postmasters and mistresses. Now, an Act of Parliament would be able to do this and would be legally binding because of something called parliamentary supremacy. In simple terms, it means Parliament can pass whatever legislation it likes and can introduce and repeal any laws as it sees fit, and no other person or body can change this. The problem with doing that, though, is that it would impact upon an important constitutional principle known as the separation of powers. Now, separation of powers refers to the idea that major institutions should be functionally independent of each other and that no individual should have powers over these offices. The principal institutions are usually taken to be the executive, which is the government, the legislature, which is parliament, and the judiciary, which is judges and the courts. As such, the courts and the decisions of judges are constitutionally independent of politicians and parliament. And remember that these convictions against the sub-postmasters and mistresses were made in a court of law, and these sentences were passed by judges, albeit on flawed evidence. As a result, the normal procedure would be for the appeals to be heard in court, and then judges to make decisions on whether or not to quash the convictions. Therefore, whilst a one-off Act of Parliament to quash all of the convictions would seem justified, it would interfere with the separation of powers, and Justice Secretary Alex Chalk is considering whether a bill could be made to work without compromising the sensitive constitutional balance, with ministers having a legal duty to protect the independence of judges from political meddling. And whilst you might be thinking, well, this situation is unprecedented, and I do agree that it seems that way, the danger is that if it can happen this time, no matter how righteous the aim of this bill to exonerate those sub-postmasters and mistresses, it does create the risk of opening the floodgates for this to happen again, and this time for a much less noble cause. Indeed, former Attorney General Dominic Grieve KC has stated that if you use Parliament in this way, it is in a sense a parliamentary interference in the judicial process of our country. It could be done, but it is a shortcut. And Lord Thomas, the former Lord Chief Justice, also added to the debate, stating that one of the difficulties with pursuing the course suggested of legislation is there may be a real chance that you would be freeing people who had committed a crime unrelated to the Arisen system. And if you set up a system by legislation to quash convictions, it is unprecedented. The argument being that without judicial scrutiny of the appeals, a blanket ban could allow those individuals who did genuinely commit fraud between 1999 and 2010 could also be exonerated. Perhaps the safest, albeit the most time-consuming option, would be for all of the convictions to be heard in the courts in an appeal and decisions taken with proper scrutiny, rather than a blanket ban which does have its flaws and would interfere with the separation of powers, which is an important constitutional principle. That's all for this video. If you do have any comments, then please drop them down below. If you did enjoy this video, then please do give it a like. And if you'd like to see more from me, then please do subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Take care.